Good evening, horror fans. Welcome to the ultimate showdown where the supernatural meets the slasher. I'm Jumpscare Jer, and with me is Frankie Fiesta. We're your hosts and moderators for tonight's debate. Joining us live across the globe, we have Rick, the Archbishop of Angst, all the way from Los Angeles, and from Ireland, Maxwell King Horror, the Duke of Dismemberment.
Tonight, we're diving deep into a question that has haunted horror enthusiasts for decades. Which is more terrifying, the relentless brutality of slasher films or the chilling, sacrilegious horrors of Catholic Church horror movies?
Let's get right into it. Rick, you have the floor. Tell us why Catholic Church horror movies send shivers down your spine.
Thank you, Jumpscare Jeff, for giving the opportunity to share my thoughts with you and, of course, the world. And thank you, Max, not so well, for joining me on the stage. I'm sure you'll agree with everything I am about to say. Picture this, an ancient... I know you don't have much imagination over there. Clearly, you're a slasher fan. Picture this, an ancient monastery... If I may, a forbidden ritual... The ominous chant of Latin verses echoing through the halls of psychological terror. The psychological terror means using your brain, Max. 1 second here. The psychological terror, the historical death. I'm going to use a big word here, okay? Theological dread, religious horror. You'll get your opportunity to share your thoughts here. Catholic Church, religious horror, Max not so well, clearly. Religious horror taps into a primal fear of the unknown and the divine. The unknown, a lot of what you know about. They are intelligent, unlike slasher movies and most slasher fans. Thought-provoking, and let's face it, far, far more sophisticated than some masked guy with a knife.
Hey, can I say something?
Thank you, Max.
Strong opening, Rick. Maxwell King Horror, the floor is yours. Why do slasher films reign supreme in the realm of horror?
Oh, I can talk now. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I would have had to wait a couple of hours. Stop talking.
Sucks.
So, why are slasher movies good? Well, one, they gave us iconic characters.
Iconic? A kitchen knife is iconic.
Who gets started the whole thing. We got Michael, Jason, Chucky.
A chainsaw, for God's sake. You know how dirty those are? You're realistically really going to chainsaw somebody up? I mean, the mess that you'd make, terrible.
He's still talking. Why is he still? Stop it.
Yeah. Well,
logically, outside of slasher movies, can you name any iconic villains?
Doesn't take much to think about that.
I didn't think so. So,
sure.
As usual, slasher movies dominate the horror genre.
Oh, right.
You're asking really? Yes.
Excellent points from both sides. Now, let's open the floor for some cross-examination. Rick, what's your rebuttal to the excitement and raw terror that slashers bring?
I mean, iconic slashers, really. You got a guy, you got some guy with some apparatus to slash people open. By the way, every single one of these movies has probably the same stupid knife, right? I mean, like it's like a household kitchen item that is used for cooking somehow becomes so menacing. Are you kidding me? Who's scared of that shit? I have 4 or 5 chef's knives in my kitchen drawer right now. None of those items are menacing.
That's all for tonight, folks. Who won this epic debate? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep it spooky.
It's just another tool that we use for...
From RRC Studios in Los Angeles, California, it's Rick's Horror Review Show. I'm Billy D.A.R., and I've never tripped over a branch while being chased by a knife-wielding superhuman, but I guess there's a first time for everything. And now, here is your host, lover of horror and sci-fi, hater of slashers, the self-anointed demonologist himself, it's Rick!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode Let's Horror Review Show. You can find me at Let's Horror on the TikTok, on the Instagram, and on Spotify, and on the YouTube, but you'll never find me on the old. And tonight, a different show. So let's get started. Okay, first of all, let's talk slashers. These films are, for me personally, the fast food of horror. Greasy, cheap, and you feel a little dirty afterward. It's all about racking up the body count and finding the most creative ways to dismember stupid teenagers that would otherwise have grown up to work at fast food places being fast food technicians. You've got your mass maniacs and hopeless victims with more blood than a Walmart on a Black Friday. It's like hide and seek, but the seeker has a machete and 0 fucks to give. Let's face it, these killers have more lives than a crooked politician. You can shoot at them, you can stab them, you can set them on fire, and somehow they'll be back, slashing their way through the next batch of dumbasses who can't find the front door. But then there's religious horror. Now this is the gourmet of the horror world. Rich, complex, and designed to mess with your head. We're talking ancient evils, possessed nuns, and exorcisms that make your local priest sweat harder than when the FBI shows up with a warrant. Seriously, these movies have priests more freaked out than a cardinal at a sex scandal press conference. They dig deep into our primal fears of existential dread. They're not just about who gets sliced up next. They're about questioning your faith, your sanity, the very nature of good and evil. It's like watching a theological debate with a side of scandal and demonic possession. So which is scary? Mindless brutality of a slasher flick where you know the only salvation comes at the end of the credits? Or is it the slow creeping horror of religious horror where the stakes are your very soul and the horror lingers long after the credits roll? So tonight, to determine which one of these two genres is scarier, I think everybody knows who listens to the show knows exactly what genre I prefer. I'm going to bring on a guest who often on his show explores both genres. His name is Maxwell King of Maxwell King Horror. Max, thank you so much for joining me tonight. How are you?
I'm great, yeah. Thanks for having me.
No. I think this is something that we've talked. We actually had a collaboration already. It was, we did that little. What was it for the watchers, right?
That's right. Yeah, we had made a little short. It was pretty good.
Yeah. So actually, where did you went to the forest to film that somewhere, right? In my mind, because I've never been to Ireland, there's a lot of greenery. From that movie, there's a lot of green shit around, right?
A lot of green shit.
Okay, well, first and foremost, again, thank you for being here. Let's talk. Let me change my cards. Whoops! Guest Maxwell King of Maxwell King Horror. Okay, so let's start the discussion on the horror here. Again, people who listen to the show, I have 8 or 9 listeners. People who listen to this show know exactly the kind of horror that I mostly like. But what about you? Let's start with Catholic Church horror films. Now, these films, again, as I mentioned already, delve into themes of faith, exorcism, and obviously the battle between good and evil. And we'll focus on The Exorcist Believer, because you and I have both watched that and reviewed that, and When Evil Lurks for this part of our discussion. Now, The Exorcist is, I'm going to say The Exorcist franchise, because there's more than one, but they're all essentially, getting at the same thing, right? But The Exorcist franchise, I think, is the quintessential Catholic Church or religious horror. I use Catholic Church and religious horror interchangeably. I'm sure I've never really seen anything like a Christian church horror movie. Although Exorcist Believer does have some elements of other religions involved in that one, which I think was a unique aspect of that movie. But anyway, what do you think makes the depiction of an exorcism in these films, even if you have not seen, for example, the first Exorcist movie or the subsequent Exorcist movies, I'm sure everybody has seen the scenes of the exorcism. What makes you think that they are so endearingly terrifying even 50 years after or even 2 years after the latest one has been released?
Well, I think primarily the difference between the first Exorcist and, say, Believer, right? Because Believer is supposed to be the successor to the original. But what I liked was that the original had tension. Because, if you watch Believer, they just tried to throw everything in all at once. You know, the girls are missing. Here they are. They're possessed. Everyone's dying. Oh, God. It's like, you see it coming. I mean, the trailer gave actually 99% of the movie away. That didn't help. But the original, I think, what was great about it was just overall, like, it built up to it really well. And the fact that religion was the last resort for, like, you know, the mother of Reagan. That was like the last thing she wanted to do was go to a priest. You know, unlike Believer, where the first thing they say because the girls come back and they're saying something weird, it's God, it's the devil, and you're like, come on, dude. You know, it's forcing it down your throat instantly without giving you legitimate reason as to why it's possession or anything to do with demons and stuff. You know, so the build up, and you know, a lot of filmmakers today don't have the patience to build up anymore. They just want to get straight into the good shit, and that's the problem.
Okay, so I got another question here. I know that you also touched upon, by the way, Maxwell King Horror. Go check out his stuff. This is an interesting video. I mean, all your stuff is interesting. I always love the introductions that you do for all your videos. But I have a question about one of the ones that you did that is specifically about CGI in horror. Now, if I remember correctly, your words, not verbatim, but the gist was that you are not a fan of CGI in horror movies, and that horror movies are essentially being trashed by modern CGI versus, you know, older films that rely heavily on practical effects. Why do you feel that? Or rather, the question more specifically related to these movies: the first Exorcism movie, zero CGI. The latest Exorcism movie, far more CGI. Do you like the combination of, or tell me just your thoughts in general on CGI first in horror, and then we can discuss specifically, you know, the exorcism scene for The Exorcist.
Well, for me...
Uh-oh.
Are you okay?
No, go ahead.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, practical 100%. I hate CGI. I do not like it at all. Like, I'm all for it. If you make a movie and you have 10%, 5% of CGI in the movie, you might get away with it. Like, you know, like Winnie the Pooh, like Blood and Honey, it had CGI blood.
Right.
You tell me you couldn't just make actual blood like they did in the old days, and it would have been more effective. Or like it. You know, Pennywise, like Tim Curry's had the real teeth. You know, when he went to fight Georgie's arm off. That's scary because they're real teeth, they're prosthetic, you know. And then you get the Bill Skarsgård one, and it's all CGI, it's all digital, you know, the teeth. It's not scary because you know it's not really there, it's computerized.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know.
No, not a fan. Okay, let me ask you this. The first Exorcism movie, zero CGI, or rather, the first Exorcist movie, zero CGI. The one by the way, this is one of my favorite movies, horror movies of all time. I would put this either, depending on the day, 1 or 2 in terms of like in horror history. I think it's one of the scariest movies. But 50 some years later, I'm actually 1973, 51 years later. Does that scene of you know, when the girl started spinning her head around, which everybody has seen this scene, does that scene not represent the pitfalls of practical effects in the year 2024?
Of course. I mean, it holds up today, doesn't it?
Right?
Anybody can watch that today and think, that is scary. How do they, if anybody asks, how do they do that? You know it held up perfectly.
Right. At the time, scary, right? Obviously, even if you saw this, by the way, we'll get to this point next. But at the time, obviously, no one had ever seen this. You didn't have the benefit of comparing this movie's practical effects for horror with another one. At the time, extremely scary. But even when I saw this as a kid, that scene sort of looked a little goofy for me personally. It wasn't that scary. Now, I'm going to say every other scene when she's walking downstairs backward, which by the way was only released I think in 2001 in the special edition. Those scenes, zero CGI and legitimately still scary in the year 2024. Would you agree or disagree?
Definitely, yeah. It's something. It's just so inhuman about it, like going down the stairs backwards. I mean,
Right?
it's just like you see it, and you're like, what the fuck is that?
I think
It's different.
one of the interesting things about that scene, again, practical stuff, is that it wasn't seen by original audiences in 1973. They only saw that 20 years later, this is probably the first movie, or rather the only version of the movie that I have ever saw. Okay, so CGI, still a scary movie. Okay, tell me your thoughts now. Again, we can fast forward now and talk a little bit about the latest Exorcist movie, Exorcist Believer. First and foremost, did you like that movie? Tell me why you didn't like that movie.
Fuck no. And everything. It was just. It was lazy. It was a cash grab in my eyes. It was literally the only difference between that and the original movie was there were two girls. That's it.
Yeah.
And less effort.
So did you?
And then
Yeah.
they brought back Reagan's mom and wasted her away. And she was talking about completely trying to retcon the original, oh, I don't know, they wouldn't let me be part of the patronage or Patreon or whatever it is. And it's like, you weren't even in the room. You're outside the room while these two men gave their lives to save your daughter. It's like, which movie were you thinking of? Hated everything about it. Everything.
Okay, what about so I obviously I'm gonna say that that movie didn't. It's not that I didn't like it. It just wasn't scary, right? I like exorcist stuff. The idea of the exorcism, and the ritual itself being based on an actual thing that priests perform is a scary thought to me. But what I liked about this movie, and agree. Tell me if you agree or disagree, but this felt like not felt like, but obviously there wasn't just a priest or a representative of the Catholic Church. There were representatives from a lot of different religions in this movie, right? I thought that was an interesting thing that had not been done in other movies before. Did you like that, or do you think exclusively these should be Catholic Church horror only and nobody else?
No, I mean, Believer did have some good points about it. I thought the cinematography was good. He done a really good job with that, and I'll praise them for that, at least. And the girls did really good acting, the two that were meant to be possessed. They did a really good job, so fair play to them. But I just felt they didn't really know what they were going for. It's they had all their ideas, but they just weren't going all the way. And then, at the end, everybody was coming in with, holy water and preaching. And
yes, holy water. Oh, yeah, prop free. What we got here for everybody at home to see? Oh, you can't see holy water only. You never know. Never know when that might be needed.
You never know.
Okay, let's move on. It's still on religious horror. By the way, again, I use Catholic Church horror with religious horror exclusively, but it does seem like they're almost exclusively Catholic Church related. What about the Catholic Church makes it perfect for horror, Max? Why the Catholic Church as opposed to another denomination, or God, I'm so ignorant in religion, honestly, but Christianity or Islam? What about Catholic Church that makes it the interest of horror films in general? Why Catholic Church?
I think it's because it's the most known religion. I think it's probably somewhere, an island somewhere where people probably worshipped a can of baked beans that washed up. I don't know, but the world doesn't really got to know that. Everyone says God. Oh, we all know God. There's only one. It's more common, but where there's a God. There's also the opposite, so the Antichrist, right? So there's,
Yeah.
I mean, name something scarier than the concept of the devil.
That's true. That's true.
It's scary, right? And you could use that
Really?
in a horror movie, but if it's done properly, and well, it can actually be scary
Yeah.
if it's done properly.
That's true. All right, let's move on to When Evil Lurks. First and foremost, When Evil Lurks. Your thoughts? I know that this movie, actually, I don't remember. I speak Spanish, obviously. I don't remember if I saw it in Spanish or if there was a subtitled or English version of that movie here. But what'd you think of this movie?
I enjoyed it. I mean, for what it was, I knew going into it that it was going to be subtitled. It's subtitled in Spanish, but the movie's in Spanish and subtitles are in English. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was different, and there were like really shocking scenes, like with the dog and the little girl, and it was suddenly attacked. So I thought that was shocking. That caught me off guard.
Yeah, right.
I was like, holy shit. I knew because they were panning the camera too long on the little girl, like focusing on the dog, like patting it, and focusing too much. I was like, is something going to happen? Why are they focusing on? And then I was like, oh shit! I knew something was going to happen.
Yeah, it's
But they done a good job. I enjoyed the whole movie, and even the ending. I thought it was pretty good. I was like, okay, all right. The guy lost everything. He's on his knees crying. He's probably going to get killed next. But what did you think?
I mean, I loved it. I again, like just give me some demonic possession any day. There's so many demons to choose from, right? But the concept, I think, the real reason I think why I really enjoyed this movie was not just the shocking stuff. By the way, spoiler, super spoiler full. If you have not seen these movies, I mean, one of them's like 51 years old. So. But yeah, the concept of demonic possession via viral or infection, the way that you'd get zombified, I thought was brilliant. I've never seen anything like it, and I really, really enjoyed that. Did you like that? The fact that the demonic possession itself doesn't happen the way that it usually happens. Like even for The Exorcist, it sort of feels like the demon is tied to a particular person, and it takes like an exorcism to pull it out. Not here. Here it's like you come into contact with this thing, you're fucked.
I like that though. I like that different approach because we've all seen possessions before. Oh, like someone changes and the personality changes. We've seen that with like The Conjuring, The Exorcist movies. We've seen that, but it's cool to have a different approach and a different okay, I didn't see it done this way. This is cool. I like that. I did like it.
Yeah, same here. Again, if you have not listened, go check out Max's stuff. Actually, all of your stuff is in video. If you have not listened to my review on that movie, go check that one out. I wasn't doing video reviews yet. I was a little shy. But yeah, both of them, we've both reviewed those movies. Go check out both. Yours is super short, 20 minutes long. Beautiful, but it's well described. I really enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed the concept. Okay, I think for now, let's move on to probably a genre that is a little more to your liking here, right? So slashers versus non-slashers, okay? So tell me about slashers. These movies often feature, I think they're staples now, you could call them, or tropes, mass killers, high body counts, and of course, either, if you like these are not a trope or iconic final girls. Some of these movies, or specifically the ones that we'll talk about tonight, because we both reviewed these, and I want to get your opinion on these, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Scream, I think considered probably two of the best slasher films of all time. But what do you think? This one's interesting to me, and I can get into this, but give me your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Why is this so effective in instilling fear, really despite its relatively low body count, low budget, and I'm going to say zero gore? Why is this so good?
Well, I think it's the shock factor. Whenever I first watched the movie, like years ago, I watched it, the first thing that hit me while I was watching it was, this feels like a documentary. This feels wrong because there's no, like the generic slasher movies today, or even horror that has that suspense music. Like before a jump scare comes out, it's like, oh, and it's like, oh, wait, there it comes. Hey, there it is. Yeah. Well, the jump scares in that movie, there was none. He just, like Leatherface just appeared. No music, no warning, and that was scarier because it felt real. There's no music. It felt like a documentary. You're with somebody and you see them get hit with a hammer, and again, the zero gore. Slasher movies don't need gore. Yeah, it's great to have it. Like Halloween 1 didn't have any blood in it at all. It was still effective. And it's the same with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It did have a bit of blood, like when they were hitting Sally in the back of the head with a hammer. There was a bit of blood, but it was still a bit minimal. But yeah, because it felt real, that's why it's scary. It was like a documentary.
Why? Yeah, totally. It does feel though, and not all of them, but it does feel. So when I saw this movie, I was surprised, considering how violent, or how violence is displayed in like slashers and modern slashers, or really probably one of the biggest appeals of slashers is to see the creative kills. We can talk about like in a violent later if we really wanted to, but that movie has 0 on-camera kills. It's really very much a psychological film. You don't see Leatherface actually killing anybody. You see some, I think it's a perfect example of a combination of psychological and slasher, because you don't actually see him killing anybody. Does that work for you like in a modern movie? If a modern slasher does not have on-camera kills, is that a good movie to you? Or is it now evolved, or I should say, devolved to the point where the slasher fans we demand creative kills, because that's what it feels like people really like, right? I mean, talk to me.
I mean, the thing about I know we did see him kill one person in the original, and that was what do you call it?
Franklin.
He came out of the guy was in the wheelchair and came on and just cut him up. I mean, we saw him kill him. But we didn't actually see it, but we knew he was doing it. But yeah, I mean, the part where if it goes to kill somebody and you don't see the money shot, some people will be either disappointed by it, or your imagination will come up with something way scarier than they could have showed you. I think that's why it's effective.
Yeah. So you obviously have a general positive view of this movie. Where would you rank the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the history? And actually, people don't even consider it quite a slasher yet. I've read that is sort of considered the grandfather or the precursor to the modern slasher, but it's a slasher itself, right? I mean, it's got all the elements of the slasher, or at the very least gave birth to many of them. You got a final girl trope. You got the final girl who does stupid shit by running up the stairs, or the dumb characters running towards the direction of the killers. Like all the things that I hate about these movies, they exist in this movie. So where would you rank the modern Texas, or rather the Texas and subsequent sequels? But again, I think another staple of slashers is endless amount of sequels, right? Where would you rank the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the pantheon of slasher films?
I mean, I know it's a very important slasher movie. It's paved the way for future slasher movies. But rank-wise, and it's one of the movies I don't think. The reason I have to knock it down a little bit is because I don't think it has that much rewatchability. It's not one of the movies, at least for me personally. Maybe everybody else is different. That's cool, but it's not one of the movies I can say every week. Oh, I'm gonna put this on. Oh, watch this next week. And it's I can watch it. Okay, cool, and then that'll be me maybe for 8 months, maybe a year. Maybe I'll put it in again. So because of that, it sort of goes down. So I'd say in the middle. From the pyramid, say be in the middle. But importance-wise, it's the top, but in the middle. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah. What about Leatherface himself? I think even if you've never seen those movies, you probably know who Leatherface is, right? Or you have an idea if you saw the character that you know who he is, or you know who he was. He's would you say, besides Norman Bates, is he the slasher? Is he the iconic character that you were describing upon which every single subsequent slasher has been based on?
Well, Leatherface isn't. They got it wrong in the Netflix movie that they made 2 years ago. Leatherface doesn't set out to kill people. He doesn't make it his business to get up and say, okay, I'm going to go out and kill about 10, 40 teenagers. Why the fuck not? The only reason he killed those people was because they came into his house and he panicked. And he hit them with a hammer, he did whatever he had to, but because we saw a scene in the original where he's like panicking, he's looking out the window, and he's mentally, he's just not there. But he doesn't set out to kill. It's just because we saw him get his ass whooped by the cook. So intimidation isn't really. If you look at over face, then that's a different level. That's especially at the end of the second one. If you haven't seen the second spoiler, but that's been out for all. At the end, like where he's just casually talking to the lady, and he's like, offering her a sandwich, and then suddenly gets the shovel and just whacks it.
Yeah.
And then casually starts whistling as he walks around the kettle. Perfect. That's different.
Yeah, that's very accurate representation there.
Yeah.
No. Your movement, very accurate representation of the slasher. Good job. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, look at that. Let's move there. Let's move on to Scream. I think Scream, another one of the films that is widely considered one of the best slashers of all time. It's known for self-aware and meta approach. How do you think this film revitalized the slasher genre in the 1990s? Because obviously you had a lot of slashers in the 1980s, but a lot of sequels, and you could argue a lot of bad sequels, but how does the slasher genre get revitalized by Scream in 1996?
I think because they brought it back to modern times. In the 90s, slashers definitely were slowly dying off. They're becoming, I think things were becoming more like monster movies, were slowly becoming like the thing. And then I think people lost interest in horror in the 90s. I think because everyone was going more to comedy, because there was just no good horror movies. And the sequels, like particular movies, were garbage. Like, we had Halloween 5, West Coast Mania, all the other bad sequels that people just sort of lost hope in good slashers. They're like, oh, well, let's guess this is the future, huh? Great. But then whenever Scream came out, it revitalized the entire thing, it modernized it, with poke fun at things, and people are like, oh shit, okay, yeah, okay, the rules, okay, oh, fine, okay, now we're new. And they started to understand it. They introduced it to a whole new generation, a new audience, and it brought the old ones back in the end. It was another important movie.
Do you need horror movies, or rather, do you need now, like you said, it brought it to modern audiences, but do your slashers need to be self-aware, like Scream is, for it to work nowadays? Or can you still get away with just a straight-up slasher?
You can get away with it just being a straight-up slasher, but there's that many out there today that, it's hard to make a slasher movie that's not generic, because
even after Scream poked, Scream's obviously not the only one to poke fun at it. If you've never seen The Conference, have you ever seen The Conference?
Conference? I don't think so, no.
You should watch that. It's a European film. I don't know if it's Swedish or Finnish, but it is hilarious. It's a slasher, but it's a very much self-aware meta slasher. It's hilarious. I call it like a combination between Scream and The Office. It's really fun. It's a really fun movie. But for me, and I know I just completely interrupted you. They need to be meta. Like, I love Scream because it's funny, it's intelligent, all the stuff that I feel is missing from slashers. But The Conference is this way. Like, I cannot take these movies seriously. They don't do it for me. Like, I just get so frustrated. But you said you can get away with a straight up slasher nowadays. Do you prefer just a straight up slasher versus a meta slasher like Scream?
If it's done properly. And there's a small list of what you need in a slasher movie, right? Good kills, that's the most important thing. Hits, let's be honest. And no one really goes to a slasher movie for big, deep story, and we just go there to see a bunch of horny teenagers get their asses killed in awesome kick-ass ways. So we can leave and say, okay, this kill was good. What do you think of that kill? Oh, that kill was cool. And then, But, today's audience, is really sensitive. So there's always so many things you can kind of do. But it can be done, but it's a tough one,
Is it?
What do you think?
Well, I'm not a fan of them. I just can't do it. Like they just, I can appreciate a good movie. Like I don't not say, I don't watch those movies, they suck. Like no, like for example, I can tell you like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, revolutionary film. Extremely low budget, but it changed the horror genre, right? Scream did the exact same thing in a different way. Not necessarily low budget, but it revolutionized the genre again. So I like and I can appreciate movies that do that because they change the course of history, they change the genre. Those are important films. But if you told me, hey, have you ever seen, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 17? I haven't. I'm not going to. I'm sorry. Like it's just, it's not the best in the series, but it's a good entry. And it's like, because I'm going to be very honest, because only like 8 or 9 people listen to this, and I hope nobody in your audience listens to this, I don't like sequels. I'm not a fan of sequels in general. I just feel like the idea, the good idea is used up in the first film, and then, it just gets repeated and really redone again in the second, the third, and the fourth film. Like there's very few movies whose sequels I enjoy. Back to the Future is one of them. But for the most part, I'm not a fan of sequels in general, right? I mean, obviously, there's exceptions. I'm not saying all sequels suck, but no. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I agree, though. Some slasher movies that I wish should have been just a one and done. Halloween, for example, I think it could have been it was intended to be a one and done.
Yeah.
And then, Psycho you could say, but Psycho 2 was really good. So, but you could have left it at one. It had a good ending.
Sure.
You could have left it. But yeah, I agree. When franchises go on, they just tend to milk it so much as to where it's not scary, it's not effective, it's just.
But you know what?
Boring.
It's true, but and it's not a problem. Like, everybody has a preference, and that's okay. Like, I know they're not making Saw 10 for me. That's okay. Like, I'm not angry that there's somebody out there who still enjoys Saw after 10 or 11. Actually, in the main franchise, 10 plus Jigsaw plus the 3D. I think it's 12 or 13 films, but it's okay. Like, I don't need the movie to be for me. I get it. Somebody's watching that, and as long as you keep enjoying it and they keep making quality content for you, by all means, keep watching that shit. Like, I don't get angry because, damn you, another slasher. Why? But let me ask you, and by the way, a related question. Do you consider sloths to be slashers? That just straight up torture porn? Is that a slasher?
I'd say torture porn.
I would say so too, right? It's not really a slasher, right? I mean, I think it's a different question for another day about that. That guy has some issues. But let me ask you, one of the things that I really enjoy, actually I really don't enjoy about slashers, the tropes. Probably we can get into a completely different discussion about tropes in horror movies in general, but is a slasher a good slasher if it does not have a final girl in it?
I don't think so, no. I mean, you can get away with being a good slasher. I mean, I think we need more final men. Personally, I mean, Tommy Jarvis is one of my favorite ones, primarily from Part 6. But they can get away with it. It doesn't always have to be a final girl. Everyone always talks about, I always see videos like on YouTube ranking final girls. Who's the best final girl? You don't see anyone like, what's the ranking the best final man? Who's the best final man? You don't see, and I wish they would sort of embrace them a bit more. But if they did, of course, it's going to be people jumping in. Oh, well, it has to be the man, isn't it? And it's like, oh, dude, that's not the point. But yeah, I mean, doesn't need a final girl. That's what I think.
Is there a favorite trope that you think? That I asked about final girls, but is there a favorite trope, or is there a trope that you need to have in a slasher? Like for you personally, for your taste, is there one thing that a slasher must have?
Balls.
What is it?
Balls. There's lots of
gotta have that.
I mean, you need that. I mean, I've seen slash movies where they go and they go and to show like a really cool kill, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be cool. And the camera cuts, and then you see the aftermath. Like,
you want
it didn't have the balls to show the whole scene. Come on, you need a slash movie. You need to have balls, man. Come on.
You want to see that. You have to see that on camera.
Yeah, I have to see. I want to see how it happened. That's why we go to slash movies, to see the cool kills. And you're not going to show us cool kills. Why are we there?
Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I actually don't enjoy that much. Maybe that's why I don't really like that. Like, it's just like, I would rather not. Like, but there's a reason for that. Like, when I was a kid, I used to be on the internet looking at stuff that I really shouldn't be looking at on Rotten.com. And I feel like it's just really just rotted my brain. So, yeah, let's just leave it there. So, I feel like I've had enough of that. I had a lot of that too young, too fast. But is there one trope, in the genre that you think is overused and we could use less of?
Jump scares. I think jump scares are way overused. To a point now they're predictable.
Yeah.
Every single time. And that's sad. I mean, like, a really effective jump scare, like in The Exorcist 3, which I think has one of the best jump scares ever in horror.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. It's your type of genre. It's whenever the nurse is walking and suddenly she's walking behind her like that. And it's scary because you don't see it coming. But yeah, that's been effective. But they've been done to death ever since for years. Every movie, like, look at The Nun, just jump scare galore. It's overused, There's other ways to scare your audience than just jump scares. You understand?
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things like that I have on like my list. Like when I review stuff, it's like, is the jump scare overused? Because I just feel like I get there's an appropriate time and place for it. I'm not saying don't use it, but don't be so reliant on the stupid jump scare. It feels like some movies just always like 3, 4, 5 jump scares, and it's like it's just overused. It's overdone. Like, do something else. Be more creative. It's like a super loud noise, pow, and somebody gets scared. Like, what the hell? Come on! Yeah, I agree with you. Is there, let me ask you this. Does a slasher film need to have a masked killer in order for it to be a good movie? Must you be a masked killer?
No, I don't think so.
Can you give me an example of a good movie, a good slasher that does not have a masked killer?
I think it could count as a slasher, American Psycho.
He's definitely a slasher. Yeah, actually, that's a good movie. Yeah.
You see his face, so he doesn't wear a mask. You see him, but and it's even scarier because of how well, it was acted. Christian Bale acted the whole thing. You saw his face, expression, the coldness, and that made it scarier, and it made it interesting because you knew who he was, and you could see him interact with people. You saw when people were pissing him off, you could see his face, and you were thinking, "Oh, is he thinking he's going to kill this guy or shit?" So, yeah, I think, in fact, I would like to see more of it. I mean, again, like Norman Bates did it. He doesn't wear a mask. He just wears his mom's clothing. And then it's a different story, though.
That's very true. Okay, let us move on here. Okay, so we talked about the favorite tropes, and of course I didn't move my card, so that's gonna show up. All right, let's explore why different audiences might be drawn to different horror subgenres. Obviously, we're only talking about slashers and Catholic or religious horror, but there's so many. Psychological, which I think, for the most part, like Catholic Church horror, I think falls under the psychological realm. You never really see an entity, or you rarely see an entity. The person is possessed, like the person itself becomes the evil person. It's more of a psychological thing when you think about like these horror movies, right? It's like the what would happen to me if I became possessed, that's how I look at it anyway. Versus what we just talked about, you got to see the gore. It's got to be a physical horror. If you don't see the person getting killed, if you don't see that on camera, it's not a slasher, right? But what do you think are some audiences, particularly you and I are part of those audiences, but why do you think some of us are drawn more to psychological elements of, like I just said, Catholic Church horror versus people who prefer more physical on-camera horror in horror in general, or slasher films?
I probably am trying to think of like examples. Like I know we've had like Conjuring or even Insidious. We see the guy, possessed at the end, and he was like the villain, but again he was possessed by the witch. But I know it's not really got much to do with like religion, but they did talk about religion and stuff in that movie, and in takes on that. Like, but I'm not really sure about that. What do you think? I mean, what do you think makes it important?
I don't know. Again, from my personal experience, I can only say that the reason why I feel like I prefer, the religious horror stuff is just because, oh God, I'm gonna lose the other half of the audience here. Every time I had to go to a church when I was a kid, like I found it was mostly a Catholic church. I always find the statues in the churches to be creepy, man. They just always scared the shit out of me. And, whenever I see that, and obviously not all churches have like statues and stuff, but whenever I saw that, like I always felt like they were looking at me. I had like crazy imagination. And I always felt like they were staring at me. Like I cannot look at porcelain dolls. I can't look at that stuff without like feeling like I'm being looked at by this shit. And so the idea of a Catholic church, the idea of being in this church, watching these movies as a kid has always left this long-lasting impression of like legit fear. Plus, we're supposed to fear the devil and like good versus evil, that kind of stuff, like versus the slasher for me. It's like I grew up in a rough neighborhood. It's like, fuck, my door's always locked, man. You want to come in here? You better come with a fucking knife or some shit like that. Like it doesn't, maybe it's the rougher upbringing in the rougher neighborhood that doesn't really get me that scared, It's like, you want to bring some shit, bro? Fucking bring it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's my personal thing,
Opening your door, say, oh, come on in.
Yeah, you want in? Bring your fucking knife. Come on, let's go.
Bring that open short.
Yeah. And also, I think what I alluded to earlier, I think the whole idea of the gore stuff, I got over it. I got over the need for gore, from a very young age. I should have not, and I'm not the only one, obviously, but, Rotten.com, and like that kind of shit that was available in the world, in the whole World Wide Web before it turned to be what it is today, was just wild. And like being a little kid looking at that kind of shit that I shouldn't be looking at, I think really now has pushed me away from that kind of stuff as an adult, where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to remind myself. Just talking about it now, it's like, yeah, you know what? I saw some shit. I've seen some shit, Max. Let me tell you. Maybe that's why. Yeah, exactly. Oh, no. No more of that. Okay. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. No. All right. So settings and atmosphere. How do you think, or do you think a particular setting in these some genres is more appealing than other settings? For example, like in a classic slasher film, it's not the only one, but you're at some campsite, the teenagers are doing teenager shit when they shouldn't be doing, or a Catholic church movie or a religious horror movie takes place. Important scenes take place in a campsite, or important scenes take place inside a church. Rural areas versus churches. How do you see these two scenes or these two settings being more important than one another? Do movies in these genres need to have these settings to be considered? Like, for example, you said American Psycho earlier, but does a slasher movie need to have an isolated setting? Does a Catholic church horror movie, must it feature a Catholic church for it to work?
I think so, yeah. I mean, slasher movies, I think they do kind of need to be isolated. Like, the best example of what I think, whenever I watched it, I realized that, yeah, it needs to be small place, is Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan, or, takes a boat, to be called. But, like, you see Jason in, like, full, like, New York, and you think, like, okay, this is going to be cool, but really it isn't, because it's too big of a place for him. And, realistically, if he goes up to a guy, starts killing him, police will come, and realistically, it blows that up. But smaller isolation things give you more of a claustrophobic feel, and that also causes anxiety. The same with churches. I think you said earlier about like how like the statues in churches are creepy. I agree. Personally, I hate porcelain dolls. Just saying, wouldn't go near them. But yeah, the statues are really creepy. Like I saw many times when I was a kid. I looked at the statue and I swear it blinked. I swear it did blink. And then when I told, were like, "You're just fucking nuts. Put your hands together." But they are creepy, because of the look. I don't know what it is. They just look so creepy. It's just, so yeah, church is definitely a really good spot for a creepy vibe. Definitely.
You need it, right? You need it. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think like a slasher works if you're in the middle of a city. Like, I just don't see it. I think the element of isolation is what really helps, right? You gotta have that.
You have to have it. Yeah. You can watch, like a full New York.
Yeah.
When you see it coming, you've got infinite places you can just run and hide to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like it's a country place, big country house, and you saw her running down the driveway, and you're thinking, where the fuck is she gonna run to? She can run into the trees, but we see that earlier. That face was chasing her through a tree. It's just, it isolates and you're creeped out. It scares you because you're thinking, where can you go? Where can you hide? There's nowhere. Yeah, if you're in New York, run into any buildings, elevators, you're just not, it's just not there scare-wise.
Doesn't work the same way. Yeah, I feel like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre itself, what would that be like? I mean, like the whole idea was like, a bunch of teenagers on some trip to some desolate part of Texas to, it's just, it's needed. It's been there from the beginning. I feel like it's necessary. You gotta have it. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, let's move on away from settings. What about characters themselves? Priests, demons, jocks, and virgins. Do you think that the archetypes in Catholic Church horror, or again religious horror, are more compelling than the characters found in slasher films? Is there any truth to the old myth that I heard that a demon is a little more interesting than a virgin or a jock in a slasher? I don't know. I was told, not my opinion. What do you think? Are the characters more interesting?
Well, I mean, slasher, they have the stereotypical, like, you have the jock, the asshole jock. You have the nerdy kid. You got the virgin who survives every time in the end.
Right.
You have the horny couple.
Yeah.
They always have them. Like, you need to have these people. But in, like, say, like, a Catholic, like, religion movie, you don't really have stereotypes. Maybe concerned parents seems to be a trend I've seen in a couple. Like, there seem to be like parents that are concerned about their kid, or there's movies out there like The Exorcism of Emily Rose. There is no, there isn't really a stereotype. Like, slasher does have stereotypes, but yeah, Exorcism movies, not really. Parents is the most that I can see from stereotypes.
You got
a possessed kid also seems like another one.
You gotta have a demon, though, right? You gotta have a demon. Like, you have to have. By the way, I don't like when part of the appeal to me is like them naming the demon, or like having an actual, when it's based on an actual. Well, I shouldn't say actual, but I don't know. But when it's based on something that you find in a common Bible, and a demon that is, described in the real world, I find that that's necessary for Catholic Church horrors. Like, you cannot have a horror film without, like, if you make up some demon. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're real or not real. But believe what you want to believe. But what I'm saying is, like, if it's not fun, if I can't open up a Bible, for example, Beelzebub or something like that, obviously the devil, right? God, do you remember the demon's name in When Evil Lurks? I completely forgot it. But he's in the Bible. right? Like you can open up the Bible or whatever. He's in a book and he's there, right? So when it's gotta be based, not based. It's gotta be written in the whole book for me to like it. Otherwise, if you make one up, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it has the same appeal. What do you think? Must it be?
You feel like it has to actually be a factual.
It has to be. It has to be because I think that's the appeal. That's the appeal of the religious horror. The fact that you're dealing with things that may or may not be real, but they're not written for the movie. Like you can open up a Bible, you can go, historical stuff, and there it is. Here's this demon that they talked about in the movie. Like half the fun for me, it's going to research this particular demon that they featured in the movie. That's fun for me. I know it's like what a crazy.